Welcome. My name is Suzanne Wagner, and I'm a professional psychic and one of the founders of the Wild Women Symposium, which is an event for women to help them open and embody their feminine. And I am really excited to have an interview with an amazing goddess whose name is Alorah Inanna, who lives in California. And she does a lot of embodiment practices for women, and she considers herself the goddess of wildness and permission. And so I love that. Hi, Alorah. How are you?
I am wonderful, Suzanne. Thank you.
Well, tell us all about you. I mean, I've talked to you before, and I just was so fascinated by your story. I just felt like we needed to get it out there so people really could understand who you are and what you do. So tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, uh, first of all, I think it's very fun that I really didn't notice until this moment that you are the Wild Women Symposium, and I'm the goddess of wildness and permission. So that fits, doesn't it? That's a very fun thing. I even had a website for a while called Wild Wonder Women, because you know what I heard? I heard that if you put the word wild in a title on a book, it sells. So there you go. Okay, did you know
Perfect.
that? Yeah. Yeah. But I am currently just turned 66, so that's fun for me because I feel like I'm living a 66 that nobody ever imagined when we were young, or when I was young, and also it gives women a future to live into that is important. When I was 49, I met a woman who was 60, and she was juicy and turned on and wild and free, and she swam in the ocean every morning, and she just was an amazing woman. And I went, there is a 60 I can live into. So I think that it's good for all of us to have models of, erotic elderness. That would be, one of the key things. I have always been a very sensuous woman. I've always been a sensuous woman. I've always been totally connected to my sensuous beauty. I've always loved to share that kind of physicality with people, both men and women. And I make a big distinction between sensuality and sexuality, which we can talk about. But just to say that my nature is to call forth the wild, free self of a woman. And not just women, men too, but it's definitely been more important to pull it forth from the women, because if the women get free, then the men will get free. So starting with the women has been important. And my path to doing this, you have to say, well, where do you want to start telling that story? So I will say that I was given a huge gift when I was born. I was born to a woman who was a second-generation Christian Scientist. And so she taught me from the very, very beginning that I and everybody else was God's perfect child, and anything I saw wrong with myself or anybody else was mistaken perception. So I'm just saying that to start there, and to be told that the physical universe is not real, that what's real is mind and its infinite image and likeness, God's mind and its image, that was what I grew up with. So I had a big start. And then I would jump to, having been at the age of 24 introduced to the S training and really sitting in that experience going, this is what I learned as a child and people are just getting now. But it did bring it, reintegrate it to me and give it to me more. So I started living a conscious life, what I would call a conscious life, at 24. So that's 42 years ago. And I met my husband through that, and we began a conscious marriage in 1980, and it was a phenomenal experience because I have probably never before or since felt as powerful as I did in the beginning of creating that marriage. I journaled, I wrote, I declared, I created context, I affirmed, I worked amazingly to demonstrate to him that we were going to have a relationship that was different from everybody else's, and that was actually going to be something that really did work. And he was just coming out of a divorce. He never wanted to get married ever again. But after a period of time, he realized that I was modeling something different, and he got on board. And so we began my path in consciousness and self-observation and all of those things really began a strong experience from 1980 until 1988. And at that time, we were 8 years into our marriage, 2 children, a business, and we started hitting some of the challenges that I now know were spiritually, they were given to us to awaken spiritually. So at the time they didn't look fun, but in retrospect, we see we were going through a process of ego reduction and spiritual awakening. And ego reduction is not fun. So in that period of time, some things happened. We lost the money. We lost our money because of somebody buying our business and not keeping it going. And I don't know, a couple other things happened. My husband met a woman and fell in love, even though he never ever stopped loving me or anything. He was really amazing, because if he had taken his love away, I don't think I could have done the work. But he never took his love away. He never took his desire away. It was just a matter of expanding to realize, wait a minute, it doesn't mean anything about me that he loves this woman. How can I embrace this in a way that works? And that actually became a huge door. We started working with a shaman. We started working intentionally in altered states of reality with something called ayahuasca, which people have heard about now but never knew about at the time. And with ayahuasca, my life changed forever. I woke up. Spirituality went from something that was a concept to something that was an experience beyond anything I had ever experienced. And so that is when everything really shifted. And so we're talking about the late 80s. And actually, I had in my first 3 journeys with this experience, which, just so you can get an idea of this, what we were doing was laying down with eye shades and earphones on for 5 hours, listening to music that went all the way from foresty things to classical Beethoven to opera. I mean, a huge world of music passed through me in 5 or 6 hours each time. And the experiences are just really very difficult to describe, but beyond doubt as an experience of what, my husband kept saying, be happy with God, be happy with God. He was having a felt experience of that. So in that experience, I had a being come to me 3 times, 3 different journeys, who was so beautiful. She was so amazing. She was green. She had jewels all over her, but she had no attention on her jewels. She was so feminine, and she was so loving, and she was so compassionate, and I couldn't even imagine it. And after the 3rd time, I realized this is not a dream figure. This is a real being coming to me. And at the time, I knew nothing about the green Tara, but for years, I would tell the story of this being. And finally, somebody said to me, do you know the green Tara? And I said, no. And he took me and showed me a Tonka, and, there she was, right? So that was my first encounter with the goddess. And I, in subsequent years, as I told that story, I have on tape a time in 2004. So we're talking, 16 years later, and I'm still talking about this, still talking about it today. And I was sitting on around Zafu telling the story to people, and somebody was filming just sort of accidentally. And as I began to remember her, you hear the film go da-da-da-da-da-da, and all of a sudden she comes into me. I am taken by ecstasy. I can't even talk. I'm just I'm just in the throes of ecstasy for like 10 minutes on tape.
Wow.
It's pretty cool. Very cool. It made me, if I ever needed to know for sure that I was still being paid attention to by her, I knew, right? So that that started something. And then it really jumped a whole nother level in probably 1994 when I encountered the story of the goddess Inanna. And I feel that this story is something that is important to female heritage that almost, 98% of the women don't know anything about. It's like finding a Bible and finding out that the world forgot the Bible or something. So this is cuneiform writings written thousands of years ago telling the myths of Inanna, and they are so powerful and so important. I mean, I could go off that track, but I'll just say they were. And at a certain point, I began to stay up from 11 to 2 at night to be with that energy, because I was a mother and I was a wife and I was a worker, and there was no time in my day. So I would get up at 6:30 and do children, and then, get them to school and come home and clean the house and get on the phones and enroll people in our course on relationships, because by this time, my husband and I were taking what we had gone through and we were teaching from it. So in 1990, we started a course called The Mind of Love, Essential Teachings in Relationship, and we led that course, which was a 3-day intensive, every month until he died in 2001. So thousands of people passed through that, and it was a fabulous thing, and I loved what I did. But as the goddess came into my life, there came a time when she said to me, she would be like screaming in my ear. I have the telephone on this ear. She'd be screaming in my ear, if you don't stop doing what you're doing, you're not going to do what you came here to do. And I didn't see how I could do it. I didn't see how I could stop enrolling people in our course, because it was what brought the money in, and I had kids and everything. But at a certain point, I just had to say, okay. And that was another transitional time. And I know I'm rambling, but
No,
who cares, right?
Totally perfect. I mean, it's like,
Okay,
I feel like these things that, you're talking about are so much about what the journey of the feminine is about. And I think that in our masculine world, we think that everything has to be perfectly structured. And you've discovered the thing that I've discovered, which is that when you are called by the goddess and when the divine feminine takes you over, it has a flow and a form to it, but it has a chaotic structure within that, and it's all about trust and surrender.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have this interview with you because what you've done so amazingly well is really do the surrender process and do the trust process, even when money is being offered over here, to kind of say, okay, life is about doors, and you go through a door and everything changes. And you've been willing to go through those changes, and especially the hard ones, like, having a husband that falls in love with somebody else. I mean, I think right now, I'm a psychic, and I hear this so much right now because I believe that we're in the age of androgyny, and I believe that the Aquarian age is about the feminine, but it's about the feminine power coming back in. And it is about expanding love, that love is not just to one person, or a thing. You can love your dog, you can love chocolate, but why do you have to love only one person? It's a possibility that we have to look at, that what is the nature of love? And I love that you also brought up an important distinction about sexuality and sensuality. That the feminine is so much about sensuality, but in our culture in America, they get kind of messed and mixed together, so that people get this distortion, like, oh my God, that woman's being sensual, therefore she's, coming on to me. And I'm like, no, she's being sensual, and so to teach men how to allow women to be in the beauty of the feminine and the sensuality of the feminine without feeling like they have to grab it and own it.
We have a lot to talk about. This could be a conversation that never stops, which I love. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So now tell me about like what you're doing now. What I loved was what you told me about what you do with people on the beach, and this incredible thing that you just like has taken over your life.
Wind dancing. That's true. It's so funny because it seems like the least substantial thing, and yet in a funny way, it's the most substantial. It's funny, and it's what's great about it is it does go right back to the conversation of the goddess of wildness and permission and how I came to that name, which I think you asked me some time ago. So, as I did, and I want to just say in terms of that whole thing about surrender, there wasn't any reasonable time in my life to put attention on the goddess. So I had to get completely unreasonable because I thought, okay, at 11 o'clock at night, nobody can tell me what I'm supposed to be doing. I should be in bed. So what I started doing was I would take a fresh shower. I would get made up. I would get in my goddess attire. I would sit down on my zafu. I would smoke marijuana. I have to tell you, I'm a cannabis sacrament minister, so whoever's listening, I hope you can bless that. And I would let myself, I would turn on the video camera and just let it record. And I have got so many amazing, videos, old VHS videos, that's what we were using at the time, of that energy coming in. And I would stay up from 11 to 2 to be with that energy. And then I would get up at 6:30. So I had a 4.5-hour sleep cycle for many years that let me have my time with that energy. And I kept thinking, this is backwards. I am happiest now. And then I get up in the morning and I'm a shrew to my kids, trying to get them out the door. And then I'm doing all this stuff I don't really want. I'm not really in my feminine when I'm doing it. I'm in some kind of, other pushy part of myself. And now I'm finally happy at 11 o'clock at night. And I thought, this is backwards. Women need to be able to start their day in this energy. We need to be able to get up and go into the feminine and start the day as the goddess and have that provide for our lives. So that's why I have had this passion we spoke of earlier about that women could thrive as the goddess alive, because I feel like so many of us are losing our lives to the need to get up and go to work at jobs we don't want to do that don't pay enough money in the first place. So that's a whole nother subject. However, let's go back to the goddess of wildness and permission and wind dancing. And if we should break and start a new one, maybe we should. Do you think we should break and start a new one, or do you think we should just keep going?
Well, I think let's keep going right here, because I think it's a really good subject, and I think we're still good. I don't think anybody is bored out there yet.
I don't think so. It's hard to be bored with. It's hard to be bored with me. I am fun, that's for sure. And I'm blessed. Thank you so much. Years and years ago, 1998. I had a girlfriend who told me to go work with this man, Bill. Oh, wouldn't you know, I can't remember his last name, and that's too bad. But anyway, whatever it is. And he had a process where he had you find out your central self. Who was your central self? And the way he did it was he had you look at what you do that you always do, that you can't not do, that is just what you do, right? And the very first image that came to me was me at the beach wind dancing, because that's where I go. If I can, when I want to be with myself and with the divine, I will go to that beach, and I will go there in catsuits and silks, and I will go there as the divine feminine, and I will dance in the wind. And I first did it when I was 21, and then I had like a 25-year gap of being a mother and all those things, and then I began it again, in my mid-40s. And so for the last 20 years, I've done this a lot. So I had this image of me at the edge of the ocean with my arms up, being the wild, free spirit that I am. And I said, that's what I do. I be wild. I'm wild. And it's not wild like resistant to ruling. It's not resisting rules. It's the innate wildness of freedom, of an unfettered soul. So I saw that. Oh, I'm wild. And he said, well, how much of that is it? I said, well, that's about 40%. And he said, Well, what else do you do? Oh, I thought and I thought, and then I started laughing, and he said, what is that? Bill Lamond. Thank you, Bill. I'm sorry I forgot your name probably. Bill Lamond. So he said, what else do you do? And I was there in my black catsuit with a red silk wrapped around me and a red silk over me. And I had been walking in San Francisco to get there, and the wind was blowing and the red silk was billowing. And I started laughing. He said, what was that? I said, I always call attention to myself. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't not. I can't dress the way I want to dress and not have it call attention. I can't go down to the ocean and dance and not have it call attention. You know, I can't be the sensuous beauty that I am and not have it call attention. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it is what I do, you know. And what he said, which was so great, is he said, when you don't know what to do what comes naturally to you. So it freed me from thinking that was something I should be, that was egoic and I shouldn't be doing, and realized, no, this is my gift, is that I'm a wild, free being, and I can use that attention to give the gift. So what he said was, okay, if those are the gifts, who or what makes that possible? What inside you is the source of that? And I said, permission. That I give myself permission to do this. So that's how I became the goddess of wildness and permission, is that my job is to be that free, wild being, give myself permission, and give you permission to be your wild, free self through doing it. So it's kind of like that Marianne Williamson quote about, you know, who am I not to be beautiful, wonderful, something and fabulous, you know? And, you know, as you give yourself permission to do so, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. So that's how I became the goddess of wildness and permission.
Well, and I love that, because I think as women, that's one of the reasons I do the Wild Women Symposium, is to create an environment where women have permission to explore things that they can't explore on their own. And what I've always learned with women is that women learn from other women. It's like we're informed. And I mean informed like by watching, by feeling another woman, by mirroring her movements, by feeling her essence. And one of the reasons that I like to do videos like this is because I think video is this incredible thing that the essence of somebody can come across on a video, and you actually start to, like, you think, well, God, she did that. She's got given herself permission. She's running on the beach in silks and doing all of this, and how would that be if I tried that too? And I've had so many women in my life, because in my family, I had a very, very structured family, and a super smart family, and a super important family, and so, you know, you didn't do things wrong, and you weren't inappropriate, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
you know, I loved being a ballet dancer because I got to go on stage and be completely inappropriate as a character. You know, I could be a prostitute, I could be, you know, Lady Capulet, I could be a devil, I could be, you know, a witch, I could be a goddess, I could be, you know, I could be a queen, I could be anything, and it gave me that permission. And so I love movement, and I think with women, movement is so important for helping them learn to embody something that until they actually feel it in their body, I don't think they actually get it, you know. And I think women like concepts, but they'd rather feel it as an experience. And what you personify so much is this permission to embody it and to play with it. And, you know, I mean, again, I've had some beautiful women in my life that just did things that shocked me to pieces, and I was like, oh, you can do that? You can do that in public? Really? And then it's like when one of them showed me, boom, I figured then everybody could do it, and I could do it, and it was the same thing. And so, you know, you're this goddess of wildness and permission. And, you know, one of the things that came up for me many years ago in a personal growth workshop was that I felt like I was the beacon or the goddess of hope. and that, you know, I was always here to inspire and uplift and to give people hope of a possibility and to show them a doorway to the possibility that they didn't know before. And so, you know, I feel like I have a really beautiful resonance with you because we're each trying to support the feminine in our own way, and that's what's even so important, is for it to be authentic. Like, you know, you have to come from your authentic self, and in our culture you have all these pictures out there in the movies and everything about what a woman is, and you and I both know that a woman is what's authentic inside of you, and it's like expressing that authenticity no matter what it is beautiful. And what I say in my Wild Women Symposium is that all women are a flower in the garden, and we need every flower in the garden, and that one flower is not better than another flower.
Well, very beautiful. It's true. You know, I think the thing, if you want to use that image, it's like to let yourself lift up to the sunshine. To, you know, for me, what I teach women about beauty is an experience you let yourself have. It's not anything to do with the outer experience of you. It's going to the vibration. Beauty is a vibration, and when you go there, you become it. So one of the things I really love to do is to show women their erotic beauty, because see, men see that all the time with us, but we never see it. We stand in front of a mirror and we assess ourselves, right? But when I can get women down on silk and have them be doing movement and let themselves go into the experience of being beauty, I don't care what that woman looks like, she is going to be in her beauty as she does that, right? So it's really, it's again, permission. Do you let yourself, do you think that you are a flower who is unworthy of being in the garden and, droop? Or do you drink the water of your spirit and raise your arms up and and lift up to the light and let it pour in? So that would be, and as you do that, so much of, well, this is a whole nother conversation, but I do fully believe that a lot of what has happened is that only the only expression of pleasure that we're really allowed in our world is food. Food is where everybody's turning for pleasure. So the freedom to go down and dance at the ocean, the freedom to get with your sisters and be sensuous beauty and roll around on the floor and not have it mean anything sexually, the freedom to connect in new ways physically with many people, that gives the body pleasure. What do we let our bodies feel for pleasure? It's not much. You see what I'm saying? So all the weight that's coming on our bodies is really a desire for pleasure being expressed through one of the few. See, think about how much drinking wine is up from where it was 20 years ago. Nobody was drinking wine at the level we are now, right? So the need in our society today to feel pleasure is huge, and the freedom to do it is extremely limited. And it's really, I believe, why marijuana is illegal, is that it's one of the most, it does awaken you in your body. Sex is, for most people, more intense with marijuana, because marijuana actually, it both relaxes and focuses. It works on your autonomic nervous system in a different way than we're used to. So it both takes you out of your mind and puts you into that sensation or into that piece of music, so you can focus on the place where pleasure is happening, whether it's auditory or seeing a tree or feeling a feeling. You can focus on pleasure in a much more precise way and not be in your head thinking about the daily, the laundry list. So
well, and I think so fascinating that, culturally we're finally shifting, and we're shifting our perception around marijuana, and that, the cultural norm is starting to go into a place of acceptance. And I think that's a fascinating shift, from something being really illegal and bad and horrible and wrong to something that's not. I mean, I remember being a student at Juilliard when I was a dancer, and there was a woman there who was the teacher, and she had glaucoma. And glaucoma is really helped by smoking marijuana. And so I mean, as a dancer, we were all startled that, before class she would go in and smoke, and you would smell the marijuana smoke coming from the teacher's lounge, right? And I mean, we're talking 1976, 77. It was a long time ago. And I remember being young going, oh my gosh, isn't that bad and wrong? And then, I mean, even then people knew that it helped with glaucoma. And so she was doing it all the way back then. And, then of course, as you age and you go along, it's like, I have a friend of mine that, is dying of cancer. And so it's the one thing with the chemo that really helps. And so, she moved to a state that she could deal with that because, she needed to feel okay. And so there's this major shift in our awareness that's operating around this plant. And and so I think it's interesting that we're even having this discussion right now, because it shows you that there is a major shift related to it. And my perception is that the universe has put a lot of things on the planet as tools for us. And it's all about what you do with the tool and what your intent is with the tool. So it's all about making things sacred and making things, that lift you and bring you to a new state of awareness, So anyway, so it was wonderful to have this conversation with you. And I think that we'll take a little pause here so that this won't be too long for people on YouTube. And we'll continue the conversation, and I'm excited to get back with you. So thank you, Inanna.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.